Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and good friend Brad. What is going on today?
Not much, man. I feel as if I'm in the throes of despair. A nasty taco has gotten the best of me. Montezuma's revenge, man. But
nothing worse than a nasty taco.
I'm doing right. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a good weekend for me. I think I sent you a note yesterday, but I actually submitted my last assignment for my MBA program yesterday. So I am officially done with that.
That's got to feel good, man.
That was a pretty cool accomplishment. It was funny. I was texting my buddy who I did the program with, and he graduated a semester or two ahead of me, and I said, "Yep, just submitted the last one." I said that was really anticlimactic. There was no angel singing or trumpets playing or anything, but it's good to be done with that and have accomplished that.
It's probably like a sense of finality. Just, no more of this. I'm good.
Yeah. It's really weird doing it all remote. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And having just when you did the same thing, you go to college and it's like you're there, you're physically there, and you're physically doing the work, and you kind of see a finality to it. And here it's just like, okay, it's just one less thing I have to do every weekend now.
But hey, now you've got an MBA. Good for you.
Yep. So cross that off the list and keep moving forward.
Nice, man.
Good deal. Well, today we came up with a topic that I think is going to be pretty interesting. We were talking before the show about the idea of the masks that we wear as men. And how, as men, we tend to, for lack of a better word, sometimes hide our true identities, our true selves, because of some of the outside forces that society places on us, or that we feel society places on us. So I'm going to riff on that a little bit today, but kind of wanted to start it off with you and kind of get your idea on this and where it came from.
There are multiple angles you could take this conversation to. The first thing that comes to mind when I think about masks is this idea of the ideal man that we envision within our minds of who we want to be, or almost more specifically who we think others want us to be versus who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is these are scenarios that every single man is familiar with. You're hanging out with a group of buddies and you want to be the funny guy. And rather than have difficult conversations or, talk about things that are, could be a little bit deeper, you're just trying to riff and be the funny guy, or how hard you were trying to win the approval of a girl you're pursuing. That you'll essentially try to become somebody that's not authentically who you are, that you will embellish these characteristics or qualities to appear cool or to appear likable, or that there's something within you that you want to mask because it's uncomfortable, or, there's many multiple ways you can take it. But the very concept, if you really try to distill it down, is this idea that I am Brad. That's who I am. But I also at the same time want people around me to view a different Brad, if you will, a cooler Brad, a more intelligent Brad, a more capable Brad, a Brad that is not exactly who I am. And when you go through this concept of being a nice guy, which, I talk about at length, a lot of nice guys are very mired in that, is the Brad that I am is not the Brad that I want other people to see. Mm-hmm. I want them to see somebody a little bit different.
So that comes down to, I think, a lot about masking our vulnerabilities and masking our weaknesses. Yeah. And, when we started talking about this topic originally, the initial thought I had when you brought up the concept of a mask is the response of when you ask a guy, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "I'm fine." That is the typical mask that you'll see most guys wear in this world, because it's the easiest way to not show a vulnerability, not show a weakness. And the sign of weakness is considered a bad thing in society. But it's interesting, you talk about wanting to be the funny guy or wanting to be the smart guy or whatever. And when you look at your group of friends and we look at our group of friends, we can kind of see that. There are there are guys in our group, and I'm probably one of them, who are quick with a joke, but we've established a group of friends that can deal with that joke, but also dig in.
Yeah.
That's the difference that we see in terms of our group of friends and maybe society at large, is that a lot of those guys will use the humor not in a way to build and I'm just picking on humor right now, but to build the, God, I'm going to hate saying this, but build like the safety of the place to have those deeper conversations, but rather they use the humor to avoid having those conversations. And I think that's really what we're digging in here is how do you show some amount of vulnerability without making yourself feel or be even portrayed as being weak or inferior?
I mean, it comes back to what you said. Our default statement is like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm fine." That is, you're unwilling to show the vulnerability that you've got some stuff going on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been conditioned as men that we have to suck it up and get through it, and that we have to kind of hold these things in and keep that stoic, brave face. And the question becomes, why do we do it? Why is this idea of vulnerability? Why is this idea of really being afraid of showing our true, authentic selves? Why is that so damn terrifying?
Mm-hmm.
And because for most of us, you could say, "Oh, it's not terrifying," but in reality, if it weren't anything but something that produces fear, you wouldn't have any issue in bringing those things up or having those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question is, why do we do it, Dan? Why the hell do we do it?
I'm not going to speak for other guys. I can tell you why I do it. And I still find myself defaulting to this. I found myself doing it the other night with my wife. I do it at work. I do it with you guys. It's part of it is, I don't want to talk about the situation because I know that the level of effort it's going to take to talk about whatever's wrong. And I'm either not willing to put in that level of effort right now, or I'm not in the mood, whatever. The other is to have that conversation. And this is probably the bigger part, is to have that conversation is me admitting that I don't have my shit together. Me admitting that I don't have it all figured out, that I'm not as good as I thought I was, that I'm not as smart or strong or put together as I like to portray. And that to me is admitting weakness in myself. That is me admitting a level of imperfection, which when you say all this stuff out loud, you go, yeah, no shit. Well, none of us are perfect. None of us have it all figured out, but we all like to think that we do. And by saying something other than "I'm fine" implies that, we are inferior in some way or shape or form. And that's a tough thing for a guy to admit to. The other, and this is probably a much smaller reason why I'll say I'm fine, is in a situation where shit's going south quick in the situation, and you just kind of have to be the person who holds it together a little bit. If say you got, I'm just going to use an example of a death in the family, right? You might have to be quote unquote fine for a while just to kind of hold everything together while the family grieves and while, the rawness of the situation is in place. And I think those are two different situations. One is just everyday life, and one is that acute situation of, okay, somebody's got to kind of step up and put their shit on the back burner to lead and manage the situation.
You nailed it. When I go through the various scenarios of why you put on these masks, you hit it. The other thing that I'll think of that applies, that didn't necessarily apply to you, because I know you never really struggled with the whole nice guy thing, is the nice guy angle. It's this idea that me as myself, if I'm somebody that I think others want me to be, that they're going to like me, or they're going to accept me, or I'm going to have an easier time developing friendships or building relationships if I'm this ideal individual, which is absolute bullcrap. I mean, you learn pretty quickly that people don't really appreciate inauthenticity, but you get it built up in your head that I'm this guy. I'm not good enough. I struggle with my own self-confidence and the way in which I believe others view me. So if I change who I am, if I alter this aspect of my life, or if I become this chameleon over here, people are going to like me. And or people are going to find me more acceptable, or I'm going to find women that will want to date me. But again, that is a certain subset of men. Not every man deals with that, right? But I do think more commonly, men going back to what you were saying. It can be really difficult. It can take a lot of effort to go past this. I'm fine, or whatever mask we put on. It actually requires us to oftentimes have hard conversations or talk about things we don't want to talk about, or it really boils down to a certain level of discomfort that we're unwilling to broach. And I think when you strip all the layers away, it's discomfort that fuels us. And whether it's fear in embracing that discomfort or whether it's just an absolute resistance to it, we don't like getting uncomfortable.
Do you think that discomfort is because of a fear of admitting self-defeat or some deficiency? Or do you think it's more of a fear of once you do that, you realize how much work you have to do and then seeing the work?
I bet more often than not, it's the former.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's this idea that how often do we fail? I shouldn't say fail. Fail's not the right word. How often do we choose not to admit certain things to ourselves? We almost live in a certain state of denial. That when we really sit there and think about things, it can seem almost overwhelming. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's the former of the two.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I'd love to know what you think.
Yeah, I think that in general it is the former. My opinion is that guys who have done some of the work that we've done will start to move more towards the latter because, and I'm not saying you and I have got it figured out. We're far from it. But once you've gotten to the point where you can self-reflect and you can accept that you have some deficiencies, you may still throw up that I'm fine front, but you've gotten to the point where you can identify those places you need to work on. For me, it's by admitting that there's something wrong. Now I have to start working on that because that's just who I am now, right? I'm the guy who's constantly looking at where are areas that I'm below where I want to be. I'm trying to avoid the word deficient or whatever, but where are the areas where I need to see improvements? And now that's part of who I am is, okay, now how do I get better at that? And now that's more work. That's something else I have to do. And that's more of like the natural man coming in and just saying, path of least resistance is maintaining the status quo. It's simply just staying where you're at and accepting the deficiencies as you see them, as opposed to saying, you know what, with a little bit of work, I could get better in this area. So yeah, I do think that most guys are in the former, but I do think that, once you've started on a path of self-discovery and self-improvement, part of the mask that you put on is because you know how hard that work is going to be and you just don't want to do the work. You don't want, or you're not ready to do the work. It could be both, right? You just could be at a point in life where you've accepted that there's a place for improvement, but I'm just not ready to tackle that problem yet.
It can also be denial. Obviously, when you're saying, oh, I'm fine, you clearly on a subconscious level, something's not fine or something is not, that you are not well, but you choose subconsciously to be in denial to the situation, coming back to what you said, because on a very subconscious level that there's going to be a whole hell of a lot of work you've got to put in that you're unwilling to. Yeah.
I mean, it's something simple as, this is why people gain weight. This is why people, marriages fail. There's all kinds of things because people are not, they're in either a state of denial or they're just not ready to put in the work.
And now the question becomes, as somebody, you alluded to this, we figured that out. We started to learn, okay, rather than say, I'm fine. It's an understanding of diving in that, coming back to what you were saying, when I recognize that something's not great, my initial first response is saying I'm fine or masking over it or pushing past it. But then pretty quickly I realized, I can't do that. I got to start to distill this. I got to start working through it. I got to start putting together a game plan.
Yeah.
But naturally I wasn't always that way. I wasn't born that way. I spent most of my life that way. So the question becomes, how does a guy who says he's fine, who's masking things, who's in denial, who is afraid of finding out what comes on the other side, how does he start to put in the work to change that?
So there's two ways this happens. One is a personal setting, and one is a group setting. I'll start with the group setting first because I think this is important. We've talked a lot in the past about building your pack. And this is one of the reasons why you build your pack. Because if you come to me and we say, hey, Brad, how you doing? You say, I'm fine. We call bullshit right away.
Yep.
Within our group of friends, that is not an acceptable answer, right? You might be good, but you can't be fine. And there's a distinction. Good is like, I'm upbeat, I'm jovial, I'm happy. Like, really, things are good. Like, I'm in a good place. And that's perfectly acceptable. But if you say I'm fine on anything, there's 6 other guys in our group of friends who are going to call bullshit immediately on you.
Yeah.
Same with me and same with all the other guys. So that's part of it is having that group of friends who's going to call you out on it and talk you through it. To me, that's really helpful. Now, on a personal level, let's say you don't have that pack, you don't have that group of friends right away. The first thing I'm going to do is tell you to lean back on your vision. We've talked about vision in the past as well, but think about the guy that you aspire to be. And we all have that. I don't care where you are in this journey, where you are in your self-development, everyone from myself up to guys who supposedly have it figured out, all these big names you see out there. They've all still got a vision of the man they want to be. Does the man you want to be answer that question fine? And is where you're at where the man you want to be is at? Basically, is that the answer that the man you aspire to be, is that answer the answer that the man you aspire to be would give? And you start thinking that through, and it's tough. I mean, it's really tough to sit there and go, no, the man I aspire to be does not give that answer. The man I aspire to be does not do this, he does not do this, and he does not do this. And he does these 3 things that I'm not doing right now. But if you start to chip away at that, you slowly start to think about him as the man you aspire to be and the man you're becoming. That's a big mindset shift.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I would argue that even taking another step back, there are some guys, they don't even know who they want to aspire to be.
Well, that's the first step, right? Yeah, is creating that vision, creating that ideal man.
And even creating a vision. We talk about the Iron Council sometimes, and there was a guy in the Iron Council that was on my battle team, and he had no clue how to even start to compile a vision. He didn't have the slightest idea how to articulate the concept of this. So the way that I explained it to him, the thing that worked for me to get me started and works for a lot of guys is there's certain things in your life you want to accomplish. There's certain characteristics you want to imbue. There's certain things when you look at yourself and say, I want to be this. I want to be that. I want to be compassionate. I want to be strong. And start there. Okay. Yeah. Starting there and then really truly spending time with yourself to be able to understand what that means. And what I mean by spending time with yourself is this can look different for different guys. There are lots of different ways where I found myself being able to articulate these things and really start to understand what that means. I started with this at the gym. I started with this going on walks, writing in my journal. As you do things like that, where it's you and your thoughts, you start to get an understanding of, okay, I want to be this guy. I can start to put together some steps to get there. And that's the impetus, and that's kind of the genesis, if you will, of creating a vision is understanding those small characteristics. And then once you do that, you start very slowly to understand the kind of man that you are. And with that, what that means is, okay, I'm this guy. All right, this is the guy I want to be. I can define that. I can write that down. That vision, it evolves. The guy you want to be right now, you might want to be somebody different in a couple months. You might not necessarily like this idea of vision. It's a very iterative thing. It's start here with something to start to get a very simple foundation and then grow it. And then as you grow that, you can therefore start to understand not only the kind of man you want to be, but you start to understand the man that you are. And as you start to understand the man that you are, it becomes just a little bit easier, not that much easier, but it becomes a little bit easier to start to acknowledge to yourself that you're not okay, that you need to be, I shouldn't say not okay, but that you're not fine, that there's something behind that there's more to that there are areas of your life where you need to press yourself a little bit more. And then going back to what you said is after you start to work on yourself and understand that, being willing to lean in to a group of men. As you come back to, our group of friends, the words "I'm fine" doesn't fly. I think I told you and Cam recently that I was fine, and you both were instantly like, bullshit. And here's the thing is, when you start to go past the "I'm fine" stage, it's uncomfortable as hell. It's really, really uncomfortable to go, guys, I'm struggling right now. But I'll tell you what, having that group of men where you can struggle through that conversation and get it out there is absolutely necessary.
I think it's kind of interesting with our group of friends where the "I'm fine" response is almost like our red flag of, I don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to make you guys make me talk about it. Because we all know what's going to happen when we say it, but we all still say it once in a while. But you brought up a lot of good points. The idea of a vision, it's a difficult thing to create, and it's very daunting in the beginning when you're trying to think about, who's the man I want to be. So you've got a more, what I'd call, holistic approach or almost theoretical approach about the man you want to be. You're looking at it from a kind of like the interpersonal standpoint of, these are the values that I want to espouse. These are the traits that I want. These are the, the morals and the ethics that I'm going to live to. And I 100% agree that is an important part of the vision.
It's not all of it.
I do think a lot of guys have trouble with that initially.
Of course.
So what I would suggest, and what I've done in the past, and now you've got two different kind of points of view here, is I'll take a look at it a little bit more methodically, and I'll lay out a 20-year plan. Where do I want to be in 20 years? What does that guy look like? What does that guy look like financially, family-wise, career-wise, physical fitness-wise, fatherhood, all these things? Just list out any area of importance to you, and what does that man look like? And then what I do is I go basically in half-life. So I'll say, okay, to get to that point in 20 years, where do I need to be in 10? To get to that point in 10, where do I need to be in 5? To get to that point, where do I need to be in 3? And to get to that point, where do I need to be at the end of this year? And what that does is it gives me kind of this living vision that allows me to hone in on, where I want to be in 20 years is a really tough thing to look at and a really tough thing to see, how do I get there? But where I want to be at the end of this year, that's more tangible, and that's more something I can grab onto, and I can start to make plans to get to that point. And knowing that by getting to that point, it's putting me on the path to being where I want to be in 20 years, that's powerful. So that's part of the growth path too. What I talked about were more tangible things. What you talked about were more, I don't know if esoteric's the right word, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah, more intangible things. But I think as you start to develop a path on the tangible things, those intangibles come. And I know they have for me. I've developed the morals and ethics and mindset and religious beliefs and that kind of thing of the man I want to be, the man I aspire to be, by developing those more tangible paths. And that's where we start to go from "I'm fine" to, yeah, I'm struggling in this area, but this is the path I'm on. This is the work I'm doing to get there. Let's have a conversation about that now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really, really great point. I mean, what a vision looks like is going to be different for different men. Yeah. And there's no right way to understand and put together an outline of the kind of man that you are going to be, and to put together that kind of that course of action to get there. Absolutely. You think back to our interview with Dylan Bain, where he, it was the kids playing in the backyard, the steaks on the grill, with the house. It was everything that he very clearly outlined. This is exactly what I want. This is exactly the scenario that I need to have play out, and that propelled him forward. So that's going to look different for different men. Your vision looks very different than mine. My vision looks very different than most of any other man's, because it's individual and unique to you. But the fact of the matter is, unless you start to have an understanding of the kind of man that you not only are, but the kind of man that you are aspiring to be, that you are not going to truly be able to know where you're going. And you have to have an idea of knowing where you're going to really propel yourself forward day to day.
This is just like a backpacking trip or a hike in the woods, whatever. Like, you can't get to where you want to go without knowing where you start.
It's just like, imagine had you been plopped down in the Pemi Loop, had no idea where you're going, no map, no GPS, and said, all right, See you
figure
at
it
the
out.
end.
Yeah, like
Figure-
you literally walk in circles or not even know what direction to start walking in.
Yeah.
You know? So to develop this map and to develop this plan at least points you in the right direction. And you made a good point before, and I don't want to gloss over it, is this is a living document. This is a living thing. Your vision can change, and more importantly or more precisely, it will change. There will be events in your life that cause it to change. And you'll find too that as you work towards something that you thought you would value, you don't value it as much anymore. And, now that value shifts. It's, something as simple as, I'm going to be a man of strength and I'm going to deadlift 500 pounds. Well, you may find out that you're more interested in backpacking the Appalachian Trail with your kids. And does deadlifting pounds get you there? Maybe not. Maybe it depends on you. But that goal, that vision may change based upon new things that come into your life. And it's okay to change your vision. What's the only thing that's not okay is to accept the status quo and not strive to be a better man.
Yeah. That's absolutely it. Because with that, understanding the kind of man you want to be grounds you. It provides you some purpose and some directionality. It gives you a framework, an idea of, okay, here's who I am, here's where I'm going. Now I can start on, it's different for every man, but just like Dan said, and he, I can't emphasize this enough. His approach is, okay, this is who I want to be in 20 years. Let's distill that down so that I can start to understand what I need to do by the end of the year to get there.
Yeah.
And when I can understand what I need to do by the end of the year, I can start to put together, okay, here's what I need to do over the next 3 months, 6 months. Here are the steps that I need to take. Understanding where you need to go now, that provides you purpose. And with that purpose, that's what propels you forward. I mean, it's really interesting. I've got a really good buddy. I went to a soccer game with him last night, and really good dude. And one of the things that he's, constantly telling me is, Brad, you're so driven. You're very focused, and you're propelling yourself forward. Like, what's your next step? What comes next? Like, how has this happened? And, I kind of talked to him about the concept of vision and having a plan, like knowing what I want from myself and knowing who I am and accepting who I am, where I am, and working on filling those gaps. And it's interesting because you quickly realize if you have a vision and a purpose and a direction, that separates you almost instantly from so much of the pack, so many men out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, kind of coming full circle back to this idea of pushing past I'm fine, when you are able to understand your purpose and understand who you are, you're not afraid to do things like having hard conversations and saying, I'm not fine. Because you know that you've accomplished hard things. You've got hard things on your path. And the only way you're going to get there is by pushing through hard things continuously. And that does include mental, emotional elements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an important thing. And, the thing to be cautious of too is you're going to see results early on. And you're going to get to a place where you're like, wow, I'm a lot better than I was when I started. And it's very easy to kind of get complacent at that point. Like, I'll be honest, like right now, I'm kind of at a point like there in life where, financially, I'm in a pretty good place. Marriage-wise, I'm in a pretty good place. Career-wise, all the boxes are starting to get checked. And it's very easy to kind of sit back and be like, let's just go on autopilot for a little bit.
Give yourself a nice little pat on the back.
Yeah. And listen, you should absolutely celebrate your wins. That's not what I'm saying. Celebrate the wins, celebrate the accomplishments. But I've actually been spending the last couple weeks doing a little bit of self-reflection and going, okay, yeah, this is where I'm at, but where do I want to be and what does it take to get there? And it's that whole concept of the last 20% is 80% of the work kind of thing, the whole Pareto principle. And yeah. I'm getting to that point where to really achieve the goals that I want to achieve. And again, these are more tangible things that I'm talking about, is going to take more work. So I just want guys to be aware that you're going to get early wins and you're going to want to become complacent, and you can't, right? If you want to achieve that greatness of that man you aspire to be, don't sit on your laurels and count your accomplishments. Keep working hard. Enjoy them. And enjoy the spoils that come with them. Believe me, I'm enjoying life right now more than I probably ever have. But you need to also keep your head down and keep working, because there's always There's always somebody looking to knock you down, and there's always more that you could be.
Well, and that's you bring up a really good point. The differentiator between the common man and the uncommon one is that willingness to work. I've found every single time in my life where I start to get complacent and pat myself on the back and say, "Good job, Brad. You're doing great. You're killing it." Immediately things come up. Something invariably always comes up. When you get complacent, you actually, if you're not progressing, you're technically regressing. And yeah, things might seem comfortable. Things might seem good. You might be in a place in life where financially you're set. You've got a good marriage. You've got a good family. You've got hobbies and interests that, you're enjoying. You're really put together. That doesn't mean that there's not something out there you can continue to work on. Because I tell you what, the second you think something in life is perfect, you're invariably always going to get hit.
Oh, yeah.
The next challenge is always there. There's always something around the corner waiting to take you out. And we might have talked about this previously, but there was a point toward the end of last year where I felt like I was doing well, man. Like,
I remember
marriage was good. Career was going well. And I let my foot off the gas. I went into cruise control for a good 6 weeks. And I'll tell you what, after those 6 weeks, I looked up and I had regressed in so many areas. Like, my wife sat me down and said, "Brad, you're regressing."
This was right after you came back from your trip.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. It was right after the trip. Like, Mexico was awesome. Like, man, we're in such a good spot.
I remember.
She sat me down and said, "You are regressing." And a couple of guys, a couple of our friends said the same thing. And it was very eye-opening to realize just as quickly as you think you've got to figure it out, you don't.
Yep.
So it was right back to the grind. And that grind is actually, it's been good for me. I realized I crave it.
It's the grind is an interesting thing because everyone wants a break. Believe me, I want a break.
Oh, for sure.
But there's a happiness in the grind too. There's a comfort in knowing that you're constantly working and you're constantly pushing forward and you're working on all those details that are wrong with you or not the way you want them to be. I keep saying wrong or deficient, but it's you're working on the ways that you want to improve yourself.
Yeah. And
that's so important. So yeah, I mean the I'm fine or the mask that you put on of I've got to figure it out. I've got this perfection. I've got this sense of, conquering life. It's okay that you don't. What's not okay is not working towards bettering yourself and just accepting it as is. If you're working towards something, but you're not perfect at it, and keep hustling because that's where we're all at. And you're probably in a better place than most guys because you've accepted the fact that there's work to be done and it's time to get after it.
Be willing to admit all this to yourself. Be transparent and honest with yourself. And as you do that, you'll find yourself being transparent, more honest with others.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
I don't know, man. That's a good conversation. It went a little bit different direction than I was expecting, but
yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, I think it's important for guys to hear that kind of stuff. So, guys, we really appreciate you all listening. It's been some fun conversations lately, and Brad and I really have been enjoying this. So make sure you're checking us out on the website. It's untamingmasculinity.com. You'll find show notes for this and all of our other episodes, as well as links to our social media. We are definitely most active on Instagram, so hit us up there. If you check out the website, you'll get links to not only the website or the podcast social media links, but Brad and I's individual Instagrams as well. We're both pretty active. Make sure that you're providing us ratings and reviews on your podcast player. Those are what help us spread the word to other men. So please get after that. We've been appreciating the ones that have been coming in so far. And finally, make sure you come back next week for more great content. We've got a couple of great topics lined up, as well as a couple of guests that we're working on that we're really excited about. So make sure you keep coming back. And until then, we will leave you with just one question. What are you doing to untame your masculinity?